Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am particularly excited for today's episode because we've got an awesome entrepreneur. Not only do I love his entrepreneurial journey and story so far, I love the company that he's built. I love how deeply he serves the clients that he works with in really innovative and important ways. Every single one of us is going to take away some important strategies and tactics, and for sure, a lot of considerations from today's episode. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Marcus Blair. Marcus is the founder of Omega Business Solutions, where he helps medium-sized companies select and implement the right technology to grow their business or organization. They work with their clients to understand how they like to work and what technology best fits their culture and methods. And what I love about this approach is that Marcus is the first to recognize that we have to pay attention to AI and how it's changing all different corners of our marketing sphere, of our operations, whether it comes to search engine optimization and how people are finding businesses these days, or how we're processing things on the back ends with custom AI deployments. A lot of cool stuff we're going to get into. Then Marcus's company installs the technology, trains their clients, and supports them throughout their digital transformations. They do not sell the same thing to everyone. Marcus clearly loves business and loves finding the right solutions for the right companies at the right times in the right industries. This is someone who not only loves what he does, but he's really good at it. I'm excited to learn from him here today, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Marcus Blair. All right, Marcus, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Oh, love it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on the platform.
Heck yes, I'm excited to talk about all the things we're going to get to talk about, but let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. I love the fact that you're one of those entrepreneurs that started because of COVID. Seems like that was a catalyst for so many businesses being started. So take us beyond the bio. Who's Marcus? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Man, so during 2019 was a great year. So, of course, I rolled into 2020 thinking, oh, this is going to be great. I'm about to knock this out of the park. And then 6 months later, I didn't have a job anymore. When COVID started, we had the company I was working for had some, we'll call them irregularities with the SEC, had a CEO change. And then the company, they laid off probably 45% of the workforce. So I found myself in August without a whole lot to do, trying to figure out what my next move was going to be. And in September, I started the company that became Omega Business Solutions.
Yeah, I love that overview, especially because you're right. I mean, that was a time of change in so many ways, whether we wanted that change or not. And I love the fact that it sparked something even better for you. But Marcus, I'll be honest, the more research I did about your business, what really stood out to me is that it seems like you embrace that thing that we've all heard before, which is, it's not about the tools that you use, it's about how you use them. Talk to me about how you view technology, because you help people make sense of it so that their businesses can flourish. Talk to me about your approach.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. People expect things out of technology that they don't expect out of any other tool. Like, if you gave me the world's best hammer, I'm still not going to be a carpenter. I have no idea what to do with it. If you want to build a house, you're not going to build a better house because you have a better hammer. And when it comes to business processes, a lot of people think they can download a solution. And honestly, it's not their fault. If you listen to the sales companies and you listen to the marketing speak, they'll say things like, increase your sales with this new CRM. Those two things aren't necessarily related. Unless that CRM gives you the capability to do something that you're not doing now, or do it at a higher level, and you manage to exploit that capability. Just simply buying the tool isn't going to work. And even at my last job, where I used to run projects for digital transformation, the gap between the way a tool is meant to be used and how it fits the people that actually use it and how it fits their process every day, that should be the number one concern, because not all tools are meant for the same sort of audience. Sometimes that's very obvious, especially in other fields where, you could walk into someone's kitchen and they'll have a nonstick pan and they'll have a cast iron skillet. Well, obviously those are meant to do different things for different people, but it doesn't work that way with software. we all kind of think that whatever we buy is going to be better than whatever we have, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, for sure. Marcus, I love that hammer analogy. I love playing tennis here in adulthood, and I love when everyone makes fun of the guy who shows up to the tennis court with a $300 racket as if that's going to make him a better player. I love the fact that you call that out with the hammer. Talk to us about that, though, because I feel like in today's day and age, because AI is obviously extraordinarily powerful, and with great powers comes great responsibilities that we have to use it for. And a lot of people think just because we have AI at our fingertips, coding becomes easier and copywriting becomes easier. Everything in business becomes easier. Of course, it helps, but what's your take on where we are with AI right now?
So AI is extremely useful. I use it every day for all sorts of things, but there are some inherent limitations that we have to be aware of. Number one, everyone has access to it. So if I have ChatGPT and you have ChatGPT and we both say, write me a story, about building a house, the outputs are going to be very similar. And whatever it is, it's not going to be unique to me, and it's not going to be unique to you anymore. So when people use ChatGPT for copywriting, especially, it can strip away everything that makes you human, like your personal experiences, all of the emotive responses, because ChatGPT's never actually done any of these things. It just knows the patterns that people associate with it, and it does its best to mimic it. So the risk that you have when over-relying on artificial intelligence is that you homogenize yourself with everyone else. And then I think it was the MIT, Carnegie Mellon. It was Carnegie Mellon and Microsoft. They just released a study, I think it was last month, where they interviewed 319 knowledge workers or somewhere around that number. And basically the study says the more you use AI, the more your critical thinking skills will degrade over time. And that, again, comes from over-reliance, and that shouldn't really be that great of a surprise. I mean, if you look at the average person's handwriting in 1950, and then you look at the average person's handwriting today, you're going to see a substantial degradation in just the beauty of the writing and how easy it is to read, because we just don't write as much anymore. We type everything. So it's not that big of a surprise that a technology can take a human skill and make it actually worse over time. You see it with other stuff.
Really well said, Marcus. You make me think about how many different facets of life are being overturned by technology. And I love the handwriting example. I drive a Tesla and I use auto park all the time, but it gets me afraid because I think to myself, gosh, I'm going to forget how to parallel park. And when I travel and I rent a car and I don't have that. So we do have to keep our skills sharp. On the flip side, though, I know that you love technology. You see in your business, you see in your clients' businesses how it can unlock growth. And I think we should celebrate longevity and entrepreneurs. You're 5 years into your business already, and that just shows a testament to your ability to understand not just the tech that fuels businesses, but the business strategy. And so that's why I really want to tap into that side of your mind as well and ask you, how do you begin to make sense of a business? When you walk into a prospective client or an existing client's business and you want to figure out, here's what the different services are that would benefit them, here's the different solutions that we have, what are those fundamental elements that you're looking at? What are the questions that you're asking them? I'd love to see how you make sense of it.
So fundamentally, in our field, people, when they describe the problem, they're usually not describing the problem, they're describing the symptoms. They'll say something like, we need better systems, or no one ever knows what's going on, or something like that. And you have to ask a lot of questions to peel back layer after layer after layer to actually get what the root cause is. 95% of the time, the root cause is either wide variance in a process, like there's just too many different inputs that can lead to too many different outputs, so no one knows what to expect, or there is no process and it's just done, whatever the task is, it gets done by tribal knowledge or things that aren't really documented, and so they lose a key employee, for instance, and then all that tribal knowledge walks out of the door. And the people that have to take it over are just confused. They don't know why things are done a certain way, even though there might be a perfectly valid reason for doing so. And this is when you start to see, well, we need a better system, so go buy whatever shiny object I just saw, or the new CRM, the new accounting system, the new project management system, whatever. That can indirectly lead to a solution, because during the implementation, they have to think about why they're doing what they're doing and how it should be done and how often, and they have to think through those processes anyway. So it can lead to a solution, but it's kind of indirect. They're not addressing the root cause of the problem intentionally. They're addressing, they're buying something that's kind of forcing them to do that.
Yeah, I really appreciate knowing that you have a company that has so many tech solutions. I also love, it's right there in the name of your company, Omega Business Solutions, that these are business solutions, not tech solutions for technology's sake.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because for the first 4 years of our business, it was called Omega Digital Solutions. And people kept thinking we were a marketing company, which we're not. We're technologists. But it's so important to us as a company and to the brand that people understand that we solve business problems. And that's not always the easiest thing to get across in marketing. So I'm really glad that you picked up on that. That's super validating.
Heck yeah. Well, Marcus, I will say you make it easy, because just obviously researching your company ahead of our episode together here today, it's so clear to me that everything you talk about, even when you're talking about technology, is that you always loop it back into the viability and the growth and the scale of the business. And that's what we're all here for. And I think that having you on the show with us today, that's such an important call out for our listeners, is that none of us should be looking for tech solutions. We should all be looking for those business solutions. And I love, you already called it out, is that customers think they know the problem, but most of the time they're talking about the symptoms. Talk to us about how you arrive there, because today it just feels like everyone wants to use AI as a band-aid, and everyone wants to just plug AI into it. And you talk about how it's homogenizing so many of our businesses. What are your building blocks? What's that roadmap to you finding and implementing those solutions for your customers? I know you love the processes to go along with it. So what are those steps that you take with them to put them on the path to success?
So usually we kind of work our way backwards. So the people that have the problems are usually the customers of whatever the process is. And so what I mean is, like, the executive will say, I have no idea what our financials are, hypothetically. I'll only find out after, on the 10th of the month, after the bookkeepers have closed the books for that month. And by then I can't do anything about it. But what the actual problem is, further upstream, that data is basically, it's getting lost. So when I ask questions like that, especially about reports or periodic updates, anything like that, the customers who need the information, they might need it daily, or they might need it weekly, or sometimes multiple times a day, and they're frustrated because they don't have it. And those are the people that are going to call us. So we start with the customer, and they'll describe the symptoms, which is, I only get this information 15 days late or 10 days later. I just don't get it when I need it. So then you start working your way upstream. Well, where is this information coming from? Who's putting it together? What information, or what type of system is it stored in? Is it something easy, like QuickBooks, or is it something that's going to be a little more difficult, like an Excel spreadsheet that's grown for the last 10 years and is covered with sum if formulas, or something like that. But you always start with the customer, the voice of the customer. For any listeners who are familiar with the Six Sigma methodology, start with the voice of the customer, work your way back up until you get to the actual business problem, not the symptom of the problem, but the actual problem. Then you can address that with a technical solution, and then your business problem will be fixed. Our process is, for problem solving, is a mixture of Six Sigma, Shannon, and theory of constraints. And we've just taken that and sort of bundled it into our own thing, and we use it in the office instead of on manufacturing floors. But it's rooted in those three things.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear. I'm familiar with Six Sigma, but I don't necessarily know a lot about the other ones. I'd love for you to share that, because clearly it's such a big influence in the way that you've shaped your company and the way that you've shaped the way that you operate with your clients. Share more about those frameworks with us.
Okay, so theory of constraints, put simply, it's a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So, if you have what would be an easy process? Say you're running a baton around the track and you have 3 people that all run about the same speed, and then your 4th person runs half the speed. Well, obviously you're not going to be as fast as you could be if that last person was as fast as the previous 3, because they're the constraint, right? So whenever you look at a process, you take every single step of the process and find where the weakest link is, address that first. You could dump money into everything else, steps 1 and 2 and 3, but if step 4 is the problem, it doesn't matter how good steps 1, 2, and 3 are, right? So simply put, that's the theory of constraints. I hope that made sense. And then Shannon, the basic methodology is you start with the best of the best. And so say we have a sales process, so we're going to pick a KPI, like how long does it take from the time we contact them to the time it closes. And your very best case edge scenarios might be 2 weeks. And then you have the worst of the worst, and it takes them 6 months for whatever. Everything else is going to fit in the middle. And the ones in the middle are the ones you want to address. But you do that by looking at the characteristics of the best and looking at the characteristics of the worst, and then finding where they diverge and addressing those particular instances. So no matter which methodology you use, you're finding the root cause and you're addressing the root cause. It's just in some situations, some methodologies are better for doing that than others.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear that you've taken these obviously world-renowned methodologies and frameworks and adopted a hybrid model that works for you and works for your clients. And along those lines, I know that so many listeners will have tuned into today's episode because obviously they want to talk about AI and they want to hear about that. And that's a big part of your service offering is you guys have custom AI deployments. You have AI search, which this might be the first time a lot of listeners and fellow entrepreneurs are hearing about that, even though this is a real thing that we all must face and we all must have a solution for. So Marcus, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So on AI search, it's a paradigm shift. And, I think I gave the first webinar about this, I think it was last May or so. Basically, it's not complicated. What's happening is for the last 20 years, we've all gone to some search engine, probably Google, maybe to a lesser extent Bing or Yahoo or whatever. Anyway, you search for, you type it into the search box, whatever you're searching for. You click search, you get a list of blue links. You click on a link, it takes you to a page. You either find what you're looking for or you don't. And if you don't, then you hit back and then you go to the next link. And that's pretty much how search has been performed. So basically, it was up to a human user to say, oh, this is what I'm looking for. This is the piece of information that I need. Google's results have been questionable for a few years now with all the sponsored ads and so on and so forth. Anyway, in today's world with ChatGPT and especially Perplexity and Gemini, you don't have to search anymore. You just type in whatever you're looking for and you just get the answer. Now, it's super convenient for the user, but if you have a website where you are dependent on traffic, well, you just lost all your traffic because the user no longer has to come to your website to get the information. So there's a new challenge. How do you get cited in those AI results? If you don't, then you risk losing the traffic to your website, which for some businesses could be almost fatal. There was a travel blog, I think they lost, I want to say 75 or 80% of their traffic to their site because of AI search. And now Google has released an AI-only mode, and I think they've rolled it out to, by the time this comes out, I think it's already rolled out to the general population. We have an option, no more page of blue links, just the answer, and that's it.
So what's the solution? Obviously, as business owners, I'm thinking to myself, well, if someone Googles a business problem, because Marcus, behind the scenes, obviously for years, we've tailored our podcast content and therefore our website content to tease the content that's on our episode. So let's say we do an episode about, what is AI search? And let's say I titled my podcast title or episode that, well, in the past, I would hope to rank very quickly. But if Google's just answering the user's question, how can I tap into the opportunities there? What can I do to be part of what Google is serving to people so they still find me?
So you have to be very targeted in what you're doing. And this is going to come back to using AI for content creation and why it's a bad idea. So just take that as a preview. Think of the conversation you have with an AI like a funnel, right? And so you have some broad question at the top. What's the best recipe for cheesecake or something? And as you have conversation with the AI, you move down the funnel. So you go from the recipe to cheesecake to, cream cheese to sugar, different kinds of crust, whatever the case may be. Anyway, it gets narrower and narrower and narrower. All right. Now, the top of the funnel, those types of questions are going to be answered by companies and organizations that have tons of domain authority, and they generate tons of traffic. So if you're trying to outrank them, it's never going to happen. So in our cheesecake illustration, it might direct you to Food and Wine, the magazine, or allrecipes.com, or Martha Stewart, or, some of these big, huge brands with tons of traffic, tons of authority, but also very broad, sort of non-specific questions. The further you move down the funnel, the less and less authoritative content there is, because naturally it's a tighter and a tighter and a tighter niche, and there's fewer and fewer and fewer people writing about that the further you get down the funnel. So if you want to rank, ignore the broad questions, because you're going to go up against these huge brands with tons of domain authority and whatnot. Just ignore them and write for the bottom of the funnel, definitely the bottom half of the middle of the funnel or below, to getting to whatever your topic of speciality is. There will be a dearth of expertise in that, relatively speaking, to the top of the funnel, so you have a much better chance of getting cited. And this is where using AI for content creation becomes a problem, because AI doesn't have that sort of specific domain expertise in the same things that you do as a human. So if you use AI to create the blog post, it's going to write something generic and something that it already knows, something that is not unique, and something that's going to blend in with every other result on the internet. And it's never going to get cited. So actually writing it yourself, it will come out less polished. Maybe use AI to revise it. That's definitely a good idea. But taking the time to create the content yourself is a decided advantage to using AI to create the content. And that goes for social media posts as well.
Yeah, it's really cool hearing you talk about these things, because Marcus, where you really take me back is the very fundamentals of business. I think that we're at this really interesting time period right now where the cooler that technology gets, the more powerful that technology gets, it's the fundamentals that are going to be the evergreen things that help businesses succeed. Taking care of your customers, having your own voice, using your own knowledge. These are the things that are going to stand out in this homogenized world. And especially the way that you answered that question, it takes me back to SEO fundamentals, which everyone always talks about long tail keywords. I'm not sure if listeners are familiar with that, but you got me thinking is I should be focusing less on content such as how to start a podcast, because there's huge podcasting directories and networks that will answer that question. Whereas I could answer a question about how to start a podcast with all solo based episodes. That's something that I've done, and that's a little bit more refined. And there's probably even a lot more niched down content that I could think about based on what you shared. But I also want to talk about custom AI deployments, because that's another way that we can not be as homogenized as everybody else who's just using ChatGPT. And I know this is something that your company focuses on. Talk to us about custom AI deployments, and what the heck even is custom AI?
Okay, so this is something I get really excited about, because AI is a tool. It's a fantastic tool, and it will absolutely have all these huge ramifications on how we do business, how we live our daily lives. And custom AI deployments is the pathway that will get us there. And again, this is just my opinion, and no one has a crystal ball, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think we are headed for a world where every single business, every business from Joe's Accounting to the pizza shop down the street, where they all have their own AI. And we've started to see a move this way a little bit. If you've seen the Google commercial where the woman asks Gemini if to find a Japanese restaurant with outdoor seating, I mean, just imagine the next evolution of that conversation. What if the restaurant had an LLM that Gemini could talk to? Well, then Gemini could just make the reservation for her instead of her having to open up Resi or go to Google or go to the website and book it herself. It's a natural evolution of where we are headed, but it still seems kind of science fiction-y, like, oh, what's it take to have a private AI for your business? It's not that difficult. It's a little bit more of a technical lift than, say, that like using a SaaS product, but there are literally millions of AI models that you can download and use for free. And you can deploy it on a computer that you have, any cell phone after, I think, a Samsung S22 and later for sure, I know, and then the Google Pixel 8 Pro. They are both capable of running small LLMs locally on that device. It's not a hardware constraint. So these things are already accessible. You can download your own private LLM. You can give it access to your data, your CRM, your accounting, all that type of stuff. And then you can use the AI to pull insights about your clients, about your sales cycles, about all of these different things that we just don't have visibility into now. The best case now is basically a dashboard, but it's really hard to see patterns in different types of clients or different types of projects outside of the obvious KPIs like profitability, net income, conversion rates, that type of thing, but patterns from one client to the next as far as what are the contributing factors that kept this client from, not churning versus this client that did. It's a hugely useful thing, and we've built it for ourselves internally.
Holy cow, Marcus, sign me up for that vision of the future, because as you say it, in my head, I'm thinking we're probably way closer to it than the rest of us imagine. Obviously, you play inside that arena. That restaurant example is really great because it's making me think I could essentially talk to a restaurant and get to know, like, oh, hey, how are your dumplings, for example? I can ask any of these questions.
It's really, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's a great example, and everyone's familiar with a restaurant. So if you have an AI on your phone, even if it's just a public LLM like Gemini or whatever, and the restaurant has data that the AI can access, then you could literally talk to your phone about that restaurant. You could ask it what the specials were for the day, what's on the menu, what reservations are available, what the ambiance is like. Can I sit at the patio, or is the bar first come, first serve? All of these types of questions that are like, the information's already there. The only thing that's missing is the AI on your phone, which it's already capable of running. It's not that big of a jump. And I personally think that every single business will have one, just like websites. In 1997, 1998, I mean, not very many businesses had websites, and they definitely weren't as capable as they are now. But by 2005, 2008, that had all changed.
Holy cow. I know that listeners, my mind is blown right now, Marcus. This is next level stuff. Here on this business podcast, on a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of business content is talking about where we are today, but it's clear to me that you have been sitting with what the future is going to look like, and you are 2 or 3 or 5 steps ahead of everybody else. So if listeners are sitting there thinking, Marcus, I want to talk to you. We're going to drop those links in just a minute, but before we get there, and listeners, you already know, we're also dropping the links down below, but Marcus, before you tell us how listeners can get a hold of you, I always ask this question at the end of every episode. Particularly excited for your answer because it's a very broad question that you could take in any direction, and that is, what's your one best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that you're not just a subject matter expert, you're one of us. You are a fellow entrepreneur who's been rocking with your business. What's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
My number one piece of advice, and this is something that I actually had to struggle with myself. My number one piece of advice, if you're in business or if you want to be in business, is be a doer. And I don't mean never delegate. I don't mean be a control freak. I mean, be willing to take action yourself to reach your own goals. Don't look for excuses don't look for excuses not to do it. Don't always try to hire someone to do something just because you don't want to. Because before you train someone, before you delegate something, you have to understand the process and you have to be able to set expectations for them. And if you've never done it, you are simply going to be beholden to their own experience. So be a doer.
Gosh, I love that advice. Marcus, it's so clear that you also live this advice out, because I'll tell you, as someone who's gone deep into your business and all the things I could find on you and your work and your company, it's so clear to me that you're a doer. And like I said, not just a doer for today, a doer that's already thinking about tomorrow to start executing today. So I love that that's the advice you shared with our listeners. And especially for those that want to reach out to you, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here to find all this great stuff that you're doing?
So I am Marcus at Omega, spelled out MarcusAtomega, across most social platforms, Reddit, LinkedIn especially is where I'm the most active. And you can follow the company on LinkedIn and Facebook. It's Omega Business Solutions. And of course, our website is omegabusiness.us. And then we have a YouTube channel that is also Omega Business Solutions.
Yes, so no shortage of ways for you listeners to get a hold of Marcus and to see all the incredible things that he's putting into the world. And you already know we're making it as easy as possible to do so from down below in the show notes. No matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode, you'll find all those links down below. So pick your channel. Marcus loves this stuff and he's available on all these different channels. So definitely check out the show notes. Otherwise, Marcus, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah. Appreciate it, and I actually love what you've done here as far as the podcast, because I also did some research on you. So the audience you've been able to build, very impressive. Maybe one day you can tell me how to start a podcast.
Yes, thank you so much, Marcus.